Donate.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I did things and I acted improperly, at times at Mr. Trump's behest. I blindly followed his demands. My loyalty to Mr. Trump has cost me everything. My family's happiness, friendships, my law license, my company, my livelihood, my honor, my reputation, and soon my freedom. And I will not sit back, say nothing, and allow him to do the same to the country. Indeed, given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power.
Oh, my God.
And this is why I agreed to appear before you today.
So that was the beginning of the conversation about whether or not Donald Trump would ever leave if he loses in 2020. And it seems like there are more and more voices that are saying those words now, and they are finally coming from Republicans. It's a little creepy. It's totally scary. It's obviously going to be ugly because if Trump loses, the people who know him the most and the best say he's not going to leave the White House peacefully in January of 2021. And if he wins, we will not recognize this country. That's what Joe Biden's announcement was about yesterday. And it seems like Joe Biden hit a nerve. I guess he knew exactly what the issue was that would bait Donald Trump into bringing him back into the white supremacist mode. Because, yesterday Joe Biden released his video, which, he released it at like 6 o'clock in the morning again. I said, let people get the crusties out of their eyes so that they could see at least the video, in news. As they were drinking their coffee, as they were eating their Cheerios and their Captain Crunch. But oh no. He released it at 6 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I got up at like 7:30, nobody was playing it anymore because it was 3.5 minutes long. But apparently Biden knows something. He knows just exactly how to get under the skin, the orange skin of the Trumpanzee, because Trump gives this unhinged interview last night with Sean Hannity and says and today he's at the NRA saying my answer to Charlottesville was the perfect answer and da-da-da-da. And the more he talks and the more he goes on and on, the more Republicans come out of the woodwork, put their names on this, just know this, it's going to be ugly. There will be, and people are writing articles and they're writing opinion pieces and they're saying things like, hey, America, the peaceful transition of power that we've all experienced in our, short teenaged life, because as far as democracies go, America is a very, we're a tween. We're only 200 and some odd years old. I mean, we're very young, right? We're young, we're tweenish, maybe even toddler-like, but everybody keeps writing that we should never forget that the peaceful transition of power so far in this country has been a small miracle. And don't expect the miracle to happen again. This is what people are writing. And yesterday, I tweeted out last night, there was a piece in the New York Times that clearly shows that Donald Trump did it, that Donald Trump did collude and conspire with Russia. And you know what was interesting? And this was not in the piece that I tweeted out, but I started tweeting at some of the people on the left who are the most unpatriotic, idiotic people I have ever come across in my entire life. I mean, they make jazz hands look, normal. You know who I'm talking about, and the Jimmy Dores and this, Aaron Matei. Stay in Brooklyn, Aaron. I'm from Brooklyn. Live and learn. Sit at my knee and learn from me. Because you have no earthly idea what you're talking about. The Starr Report, just so we can refresh. I know a lot of people are revisiting the Starr Report. I won't do it in, a big way. I'm just going to say it this way. The Starr Report was an impeachment referral. That's what that report was. It wasn't a prosecutorial document. It didn't go to the standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Oh, no. Oh, hell no. The Starr report was an impeachment referral, and it only used preponderance of the evidence as its standard to impeach Bill Clinton. That's a little detail that I haven't heard anybody put in front of you, and that needs to be squarely in front of you as you consider the Mueller report, because the Mueller report does go as, it was written as a prosecutorial document. Why, I have no idea, but it was. And it tries to reach the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And it didn't because the obstruction freaking was successful. That is what Mueller spent 448 pages trying to tell you, that they didn't find proof beyond a reasonable doubt of conspiracy because Donald Trump, quote, materially impaired the investigation of Russian election interference. So not just obstruction of justice in volume 2, oh no, oh hell no, but successful obstruction of justice. That's what he's telling you. The report shows that not only did Trump clearly obstruct justice, he did it well enough to muddy the reasonable doubt part of conspiring with the Russians. That's what was in the New York Times piece last night, and it was written by a law professor at Fordham University. He says everybody is saying that Attorney General William Barr quoted it as saying the investigation did not establish that the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. He said the opposite is true. The Mueller report does establish that. In fact, members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. And he said, well, how is this possible? And he said, because the difference is between the way Mueller chose to write his report as a criminal prosecution using the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And he doesn't mention the Starr report, but here's where I insert my knowledge about what Starr did. Starr wrote it as an impeachment referral using the lower standard, the standard that is relevant for counterintelligence investigations and the standard that's used for impeachment. That's probable cause. That's, a preponderance of the evidence. It's a much lower standard. That's what Starr did. So obviously, Trump did it. And he knows he did it. And this is the natural conclusion that people that know Donald Trump are reaching, that because he enjoys these protections via the OLC's ridiculous opinion that the president of the United States is a man baby. Think about what the Office of Legal Counsel concluded with regard to prosecuting a president. They said he's a man baby. He can't possibly handle the duties of the office of the president with 40,000 employees at his beck and call, right? Because you got every cabinet secretary, you got every agency, you've got everything that you would. You got a government of literally millions of people, but 40,000 people in the executive branch or more. But the president's such a man baby that he can't defend himself in court and have 40,000 people run the government for him while he's defending himself in court. Now, if you have to defend yourself in court, I've had to defend myself in court. If you've had to defend yourself in court, there's no excuse that, I have a job. The judge is going to laugh you out of the court. I have a job, and I'm the CEO of my own company, and if I'm not there, too bad. Too bad for you. That might work to get you out of jury duty sometimes, but it will not get you out of being a defendant. So the entire system is predicated, this whole stupid OLC rule, which also was employed by Mueller, that said that a sitting president cannot be indicted, gives the president of the United States this extraordinary protection that only a man-child needs because he can't do his job and defend himself at the same time, which many of us have had to do. But that's what this piece in the New York Times written by Jed Sugarman, who is a law professor, and others are saying. You have Judge Napolitano saying it. You have Shepard Smith saying it. You have Nixon's old attorney, William Jeffress, saying it. Paul Krugman is saying it. Lawrence Tribe is saying it. And crazy Colonel Ralph Peters is saying it. Oh!
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
If he doesn't win re-election, there's not just a new president, Anderson. There's a new attorney general. There's a new secretary of the Treasury, a new director of the IRS, perhaps a new director of the FBI. And once he is out of office, the senators can't help him, even if the Republicans maintain the majority in the Senate. He's going to be in the hands of the courts, and it does appear that there's going to be plenty to follow up. If he's not in prison, he'll be in the courts for years. So I really believe that Donald Trump is stonewalling on taking effective measures to prevent our electoral system because he wants Russian help. I think he'd take Chinese help. He'd take help from Albanian folk singers. He is desperate to win. And by the way, if he doesn't win in 2020, you're going to see the ugliest departure from the White House in American history.
Oh, for Pete's sake, oh, for the love of... Oh, Jeezel. Oh, Mary and Murgatroyd. So if Trump loses, people are starting to try to explain to us, try and explain to you, try and explain to me that it's going to take like a hostage negotiator to get him out of the White House. And it's going to be like Dog Day Afternoon, except instead of Al Pacino standing on the street going, Attica, Attica, he'll be screaming, lock her up, lock her up. To this day, he still says lock her up. I mean, it's frightening. It's frightening, and there are more and more Republicans who are getting on board. Now, I will say Judge Napolitano, who is Fox News's, #1 legal analyst, he says, goes through a whole laundry list of the obstruction of justice charges. And, he didn't put his segment on the air. Oh, no, he did it on the internets. And I got to tell you that most Fox News viewers don't watch, videos on the internets unless their grandchildren show them how to watch videos on the internets. But he said...
So when Bob Mueller said the president of the United States did about a dozen things to slow down, impede, negate, or interfere with the investigation of his campaign or of his former national security advisor, General Michael Flynn, that's a serious allegation of criminal activity. So when the president asked his former advisor and my former colleague at Fox, KT McFarland, to write an untruthful letter to the file knowing the government would subpoena it, that's obstruction of justice. When the president asked Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, to get Mueller fired, that's obstruction of justice. When the president asked his then White House counsel to get Mueller fired and then lie about it, that's obstruction of justice. When he asked Don McGahn to go back to the special counsel and change his testimony, that's obstruction of justice. When he dangled a pardon in front of Michael Cohen in order to keep Cohen from testifying against him, that's obstruction of justice. Why not charge him? Because the Attorney General of the United States would have blocked such a charge. Because the Attorney General of the United States is of the view that obstruction of justice can only occur if you're interfering with a criminal investigation of yourself.
What?
But that's not what the obstruction statute says.
Right.
And that's not what law enforcement believes, and that's not what prosecutors do. Prosecutors prosecute people who interfere with government functions. And that's what the president did by obstruction.
He did.
Where's this going to end? We don't know.
He did.
But I'm disappointed in the behavior of the president. His job is to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, to uphold and to enforce federal law, not to violate it. If he had ordered his aides to violate federal law, to save a human life, or to preserve human freedom, he would at least have a moral defense to his behavior. But ordering them to break federal law to save him from the consequences of his own behavior, that is immoral, that is criminal, that is defenseless, and that is condemnable.
Wow. Wow. That's Fox News now, okay? He goes down this list of obstruction charges. That's obstruction of justice. That's obstruction of justice. That's obstruction of justice. That he sounds like Dean Martin singing "That's Amore." He's like when the moon hits your eye, when Trump tells a lie and it hits your eye like a big pizza pie. That's obstruction. That's amazing, isn't it? Holy crap, we ought to put that to music so people will never forget it. You know, that's how you learn math. You put it, you put the foil, the first, you do the inside the parens, right? Foil. You do that and you sing a song to yourself. That's how you remember it. We ought to put this to music. I wish I could play music. You can't play music because if it's, YouTube. Hey, chat room. But, it's like when Trump hits your eye like a big pizza lie that's obstruction. He said, he ordered his aides to break federal law to save him from the consequences of his own behavior. That's immoral. That's criminal. That's defensive. That's condemnable. Thanks, Judge. Enjoy the Fox News gulag. Thank you. And same thing with Shepard Smith. Shepard Smith, he said the same damn thing.
Jared Kushner's diminishment of Russian interference is both disingenuous and deceptive. The attack on our democracy involved much more than the purchase of a few Facebook ads. Oh. From the Mueller report, we now know Russians made contact with multiple members of the Trump campaign, including Jared Kushner, attempting to change American policies and promote Russian objectives. They repeatedly received campaign polling data from a member of the Trump team. They discussed possible business deals, policy goals, and getting dirt on Hillary Clinton with the now president's son and others. They conducted cyber espionage, stealing emails and distributing them to help candidate Trump and hurt Trump's opponent. They sent Russian operatives to America in person to learn the landscape and generally sow division in America. They broke into state and local election computers. They invaded our nation in both the cyber and physical worlds. The United States indicted 26 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies, and the Mueller report makes crystal clear, and all U.S. intelligence agencies concur, the Russians are still trying to damage our nation, interfere in our affairs, and influence our election.
What are you going to do? It's Fox News. What are you going to do, everybody? What are you going to do? Now, I got to say that this colonel, Ralph Peters, he used to be a Fox News analyst. I don't know if you remember him. He's the one that called Barack Obama the P word, the same word that Trump uses when he says you can grab them by the, right? Well, Ralph Peters said that about, Barack Obama, and now he's trying to tell you that Trump is counting on Russia to win.
I believe, with the firmest conviction I could possibly communicate, that Trump will welcome the Russian help and any other help, but especially Russian help in 2020. He is counting on them because he wants to win this election at any cost, to our country.
Lastly, just a few hours ago, Kim Jong-un arrived in Russia for his first one-on-one meeting with Putin. I mean, I wonder if they have a conversation about President Trump, and I can only imagine what that conversation would be like.
Well, I think there'd be some laughter. I mean, Kim is clearly dating around.
He's dating around.
Putin has manipulated Trump brilliantly. Kim Jong-un got much of what he wanted, and Trump got nothing in return. And that's Trump's flabbergasting incompetence is yet another issue.
Oh, my God. So you got all of these Republicans now showing up on the TV saying that's obstruction, he did it. And the reason why he doesn't want to do anything about it, the reason why he won't protect this country is because he's counting on it again. Maria Butina today was sentenced for being a Russian agent. She got 18 months.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
But after the Mueller report came out, with all of its astonishing revelations about the systematic and sustained Russian attack on our democracy and the president's sustained efforts to obstruct inquiry into that attack, even inquiry of a counterintelligence type that would enable us better to protect ourselves from ongoing attack in 2020, it became clear that there was no time to lose. And so that's why I'm very much in favor of the kinds of hearings that Representative Nadler, as chairman of Judiciary, is engaged in now. They're not called impeachment hearings, but the impeachment process for anyone who understands what's going on, is underway. It's underway, but they don't have the bumper sticker yet. They're looking into all of the evidence, connecting the dots, and as your earlier guest said, putting live witnesses on the air so that people can see for themselves, through people like Don McGahn, just how corrupt and fundamentally criminal this president was. And we cannot assume that public opinion will be completely impervious to that demonstration. That's why the president is trying to shut them all up, trying to stonewall in this unprecedented way, not invoking real legal privileges, but just saying, I'm the president, and I say I don't want any of you to cooperate with Congress. Who's Congress anyway? A bunch of pals. And it's an astonishing exercise in arrogant obstruction of justice. It's very much like, but much worse than, what Nixon did, leading to Article 3 of his articles of impeachment, the article about contempt of Congress. That's what we're witnessing. We're witnessing contempt of Congress, contempt of law, contempt for the American people.
Right. And you know what? It isn't political anymore. It is a duty that is given to the Congress in cases where the president refuses to execute or faithfully uphold the law. It's their duty. It has nothing to do with politics anymore. You know, and the struggling between, oh, it's an election. So, you know, look, why do elections start 2 years before the election? I mean, this is nuts. The idea that that people are trying to sell you on the idea, oh, it's too soon. It's too soon. You know, the election is coming. The election. There is a duty. There is a duty in the Constitution, and that duty belongs squarely to the House of Representatives and the Senate to hold a trial. I doubt very strongly that Mitch McConnell would hold a trial, but I feel very confident that if an impeachment vote were taken today based on what Mueller wrote, that the president would be impeached, and that just means he'd be indicted by virtue of a preponderance of the evidence, and that is the standard for impeachment. You know, I don't think that Mitch McConnell would ever hold a trial, but we need to get the American people to find that out before they vote for him again. And he is on the ballot in 2020. And so it makes nothing but sense to me to go ahead and start having these hearings. Now, the president of the United States is he's committing new crimes. Okay. He's saying he doesn't want Don McGahn to testify, and that he's going to invoke executive privilege, but that ship has sailed, as you know. He allowed Don McGahn to talk to Robert Mueller, as much as Robert Mueller wanted Don McGahn to talk to him. So you can't unring a bell. That's what it means when lawyers say you can't unring a bell. You can't now invoke executive privilege over what McGahn already testified to. You could have done it before, but idiot boy didn't understand what he was entitled to do, and so he didn't, and you can't now claim executive privilege. He doesn't want, Congress has subpoenaed various things. Congress has asked for a trade report. Donald Trump refuses to give a report on the $40 billion in exports we lost. They asked for the Department of Justice to testify about why they went to the Supreme Court to include a citizenship question, which would cause an undercount by about 6.5 million people in this country for the 2020 census, and give the Republicans the ability to gerrymander districts into, safe Republican districts for the next 10 years. Well, the Justice Department refuses to testify to Congress about why it's doing that. They wanted Stephen Miller to come and testify about his immigration policies because they haven't worked. Deterrence at the border hasn't worked, and they want him to come and testify and tell him why he still believes that the president knows jack crap about how to help Honduras and Nicaragua and El Salvador so that people won't flee. He refuses to testify. The president is telling Don McGahn not to testify. Carl Klein was subpoenaed to testify about why he gave security clearances to people who were clearly disqualified through their background checks by law enforcement, the FBI, and by the intelligence community, the CIA. Both the law enforcement community and the intelligence community agreed that 25 people should not receive security clearances, and Carl Klein overrode them. And there's a whistleblower who went to Congress because she's alarmed and terrified. And Carl Klein, because she has a rare form of dwarfism, she's, I think she's 4 foot something, okay? He decided to move the files to a high shelf so she couldn't reach her own files, and then, suspended her without pay. I mean, retaliated against her. And Carl Klein is refusing to testify. And of course, the deadline for Donald Trump to produce his taxes has passed. And Steve Mnuchin is ordering the commissioner of the IRS, who is underneath the Treasury Secretary on the organizational chart, to not furnish the tax returns. So you have a president who refuses to comply with anything that the law requires or Congress subpoenas. That is an out of control country. That is not a republic. That is not a democratic republic. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. This is off the rails. This has, every earmark for fascism, every single one. I mean, if you read any of the authors who study democracies and why democracies die and how they die these days, it's not like it used to be. Okay, it used to be like when Pinochet took over Chile. Okay, tanks in the streets and people shooting and purging their cabinets like Saddam Hussein did. It doesn't happen like that anymore. Democratic breakdowns are not caused by generals and soldiers and tanks in the street. Democratic breakdowns are caused by elected governments themselves. Governments that refuse to honor the law. Institutions that are loyal to the autocrat instead of to the people. Then that's kind of how it happened in Venezuela, and that's how it happened in Georgia, and that's how it happened in Hungary with Orban, and Nicaragua, which is why they're fleeing, and Peru, and the Philippines, and Poland. That's how it happened in Russia, and Sri Lanka, and Turkey, and Ukraine. President Xi just made himself president for life. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't happen the way you think it does. It's not going to look like Pinochet's Chile. It's not going to be evident to everybody all at once. The palace isn't going to burn.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
What matters to him is re-election, and it's becoming desperate. I believe he is afraid. For all his bluster and bravado, he's a terrified man. He knows the consequences if he loses in 2020. He knows because he knows far better than you and I know, far better than Robert Mueller knew what his exposure is, what his criminal exposure is. Just today, documents are transferred from Deutsche Bank. This is going to go on for some time, and I genuinely believe that this is a president who does not care about this country. It's Trump first. It's not America first. It's make Trump greater, not make America great again. And I do believe he will do everything he can to prevent our government from stepping in and blocking Russian attempts to disrupt and influence the election.
This is frightening, I have to say, because, everybody's living and breathing for 2020. And the idea here is that if Trump wins, we will not recognize the country. And if Trump loses, he won't leave. And here's how a democracy dies. This is really in the 21st century. It doesn't look like it used to look. You don't burn down the Congress, or in the case of Germany, the Reichstag. Okay, the palaces don't go up in flames, and Congress isn't going to burn to the ground. That's not how it happens. How it happens is incrementally, and it starts with institutions being unresponsive to the rule of law and to the people. And that's already happened. The Senate is not responsive to the people and hasn't been responsive to the people or the Constitution since Obama was president of the United States. Mitch McConnell totally violated the Constitution when he would not have a hearing after the president nominated a Supreme Court justice. Constitution clearly says president nominates and the Senate confirms. And Mitch McConnell would not do his constitutional duty. That's just a little glimpse into how it incrementally falls apart. You had, 98% of the people of the United States of America agreeing on something. We all agreed we wanted background checks. Well, the House passed background checks. They did. H.R. 8, go look it up. And Senate Leader McConnell will not even introduce it. He's not responsive to the people, nor is he responsive to the Constitution, nor is he responsive to the law. The presidency is destroyed. And maybe you don't understand what I mean when I keep saying that. But I mean that the president is not responsive to the law. He's not responsive to the Constitution. He refuses to uphold the law. He refuses to execute the law. He refuses to obey the law himself. The presidency is destroyed. He has stopped being responsive to Congress just lately, refusing to turn over his taxes when the law clearly says shall furnish upon request. Will not. He's saying Don McGahn, he's going to block him from testifying. He's saying Carl Klein is going to be blocked from testifying. Stephen Miller is not permitted to testify on immigration issues. There will be no testimony on changing the census, which is a backdoor way of giving the Republicans a majority for the next 10 years by undercounting people of color in this country. And no report on, his stupid trade war and what it's doing to, consumers. We paid $1.5 billion more for things that we used to pay $1.5 billion less for because of his trade war. So, this is how it happens. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. This is what, it sounds like when a democracy begins to die. The Constitution doesn't have to be completely suspended, just pieces of it ignored. And that's where we're at right now. There's this veneer of democracy. There's this talk we're going to have an election. But will the election be an election that is free from interference? Will the election be an election? I guess, the Constitution doesn't really give you a right to vote. Just so you know that. It's not in there. You could knock yourself out. Go try and find it. You won't find it. You know what you will find? You will find that the states choose the manner in which the electors are selected. So if you had some really red, crazy state, what they could do is they could suspend the election and they could choose a manner by which they decide they're going to give all the electors to Donald Trump. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's possible. I don't think you'll see that. I don't think that's what's going to happen because that would be like in your face and too obvious. And what they're doing right now is just ignoring what is in the Constitution. Newspapers are still being published, but if Trump is, elected for a second term, will they be bullied into self-censorship? Will citizens who criticize Donald Trump then all of a sudden be targeted for, legal or tax, troubles? I could tell you the public confusion that's already been sowed in this country, is a very big red flag. And the fact that there are Republicans who are taking to the television set, and there are Republicans who are writing articles, and there are Republicans who are trying to warn the American people about the destruction of the Constitution and the normalcy that we enjoyed for so many years with the transition of power in this country is in jeopardy, is really astronomical. In fact, Trump himself has told it to you.
I would like to promise and pledge to all of my voters and supporters and to all of the people of the United States that I will totally accept the results of this great and historic presidential election if I win.
I mean, that's insanity. That is a crazy man. That is a demagogue. That is an autocrat. And that is how it happens. That's how vulnerable American democracy is today. One of the things, the experiences of other democracies who have lost the protections of a real democracy in the world throughout history is meaningful now. You know, when one of the things that has been written about other places where democracy has kind of fizzled on the vine is when fear or miscalculation leads established parties to bring extremists into the mainstream, democracy is imperiled. Now, that's what we've done here. That's what the Senate is doing. That's what the GOP is doing. They're absolutely silent except for a handful of people now. Like I said, you know, Shepard Smith and Colonel Ralph Peters and Judge Napolitano, just a handful of people who are, you know, expressing, to you that they fear that democracy is withering on the vine and that this man has shown you, you know, that he would only accept the result of an election that he won.
Your running mate, Governor Pence, pledged on Sunday that he and you, his words, will absolutely accept the result of this election. Today, your daughter Ivanka said the same thing. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it.
There is a tradition in this country, in fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner, not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well, okay, a real leader, a respectful person, somebody who wants to be the president of the United States, who is going to take an oath to uphold the Constitution, doesn't say stuff like that. Okay? They don't say, if I win. They don't say, I'll let you know at the time. They don't say, I may or may not accept the results of an election. They don't do that. And that is an essential test for our democracy. It's not whether a guy like him can emerge in our system, but whether or not parties or political leaders work to prevent him from gaining power in the first place by keeping a guy like that off a mainstream party ticket, or refusing to endorse a candidate like that, or refusing to align themselves with a candidate like that, and when necessary, making common cause even with their rivals to protect the democracy. And that is gone in this country. The Republicans are not that party anymore. They will not uphold the Constitution. They remain silent when a candidate like this, a radical like this, a dictator like this, a demagogue like this emerges. They weren't always like that. They spoke out against guys like Joe McCarthy. They spoke out against guys like Henry Ford, who was an anti-Semite. They spoke out against George Wallace, who was, a racist. They don't do that with him.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
Hey! It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
I really say now we have to get down, because this was a coup. This was an attempted overthrow of the United States government. These are sick people. These are sick people. So let's see what happens with McCabe and Comey and Brennan and Clapper. They were in the act. And let's see what happens, and let's see how high it goes up, because it's inconceivable when it goes to Clapper, Brennan, Comey, these people. I would imagine that some other people, maybe a little bit higher up, also knew about it, and maybe a lot higher up.
So that's the president alleging that you, among others, were in on the act for some kind of an attempted overthrow. How do you respond?
Well, I don't think it's surprising at all that we continue to hear these sociopathic ramblings of Mr. Trump claiming that there was this effort to try to prevent him from being elected or to unseat him. And I welcome any type of, continued investigation in terms of what we did during that period of time that we were in government. And I've testified in front of Congress.
And you would do it again?
Absolutely, I'll do it again. And so people have called for me to do it, and Rand Paul and others, they make these very specious allegations that have no basis in truth. But they put it into the bloodstream, and then, unfortunately, certain networks will propagate that.
Right. And we do have a propaganda problem in this country as well. So none of the norms, none of the laws, or none of the institutions are respecting the law. The DOJ is gone. Okay, Bill Barr lied. He lied, and Rosenstein now is being quoted as saying that he told the president that he could land this plane, meaning end the Mueller investigation. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out later that the Mueller investigation had been cut short, that it had been given a deadline, and that's why Mueller keeps on referring in his report to these time pressures that he feels without explaining them to us. And it's up in the air whether or not Mueller will ever testify, because the president might prohibit him or try to prohibit him. The DOJ, Bill Barr is, in charge of the independent counsel, and he might say that Mueller is not allowed to testify. I mean, we don't know. So all of this is up in the air, and democracy has been on the slow road to Gomorrah pretty much since the 1980s, pretty much since Ronald Reagan started trashing the government itself and making that the campaign issue, that government was not here to help you, and that you should hate your government, and that your government is, a burden, and your government is out of control, and your government is bad, and you should want to get rid of it. I mean, that started during the 80s. And then, obviously by the 2000s, we had the Supreme Court choosing our president. Did anybody think that that was normal? It's nowhere in the Constitution that the Supreme Court gets to choose the electors for the state of Florida. I mean, it's just a sick thing. It makes no sense to any constitutional scholar. It made no sense even to the Supreme Court. They had to twist the law into 85,642 different positions in the Kama Sutra to get there. And then at the end of the Bush v. Gore opinion, they said, oh, this is a one-time only thing. Don't ever repeat what we're doing here, and don't use this as precedent because this is wrong. But they did it anyway. And then you had lawyers like John Yoo going, well, the United States can torture people just because it's a signatory to the Geneva Conventions doesn't mean we have to uphold them. Just because we wrote the Geneva Conventions and went around the world asking people to sign on to them doesn't mean we have to uphold them. And then you had guys like David Addington and Dick Cheney. Oh, well, the president can do whatever he wants. And also Nixon. Well, if the president does it, that means it's not illegal. I mean, this whole onslaught of trashing our democracy has been going on for a long time. And it's been this incremental road to Gomorrah. And Trump is just speeding it up. He's like Lucy in the Chocolate Factory. Speed it up, and just shoving the laws down his shirt and in his pants and over here and in his mouth, and anything not to uphold the laws, anything not to follow the laws, anything not to allow the other institutions of government to follow the laws. I mean, the DOJ is gone. You got to realize that. It's gone. The Senate, obviously, is gone, and it's been gone ever since Mitch McConnell became the majority leader. It's a very sick thing. And I told you, the first thing they do is pack the courts, and then they neuter Congress. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. The neutering of Congress. No testimony. No subpoenas. Nothing will be, everything will be defied. Nothing will be responded to in a proper and, a law-abiding manner. No trade report, no testimony on the census, no Steve Miller on immigration, no McGahn, no Carl Klein, no taxes, even though the law is so clear that a second grader can understand what shall furnish means. Okay? And that's why I want you to pay attention, because we got like 2 whole years now to figure out what to do if this man isn't reelected and won't leave, and we have to send in the hostage negotiators, or if he does get reelected with the help of a foreign adversary who he refuses to beat back because he wants their help, he needs their help, he will take, Colonel Peters said he'll take help from an Albanian folk singer, anybody, anything at all. Because he realizes his exposure under the criminal statutes if he leaves the office. He knows him and his whole damn family will not be protected.
The silence of Republicans in Capitol Hill is extraordinary. I mean, the Republican Party that I knew growing up, the party of Reagan, the party of, it's just a dim memory.
Yeah, I mean, in national level elections as an adult, I've voted for Republicans probably 2 times out of 3. They don't exist anymore. That party is gone. These people are so incredibly craven. And this was the party of patriots. They were going to defend the American Alamo to the last round.
And the Constitution. Right. I mean, that was everything.
Oh, forget the Constitution.
Yeah.
They don't, I mean, they're shredding it. I mean, again, the constitutional crisis is right now with the Republicans in Congress preventing Congress, doing their best to prevent Congress from fulfilling its duty of being a check and balance on the president. Mm-hmm. And they also allow this president, who has already gone rogue, it's not a question of will he go rogue, he is daily damaging our country at home and abroad. And Anderson, I don't get a buzz off being on TV. The reason I'm here is because I believe deeply we have to speak out. When Trump's gone, I'm gone. Sooner's better than later.
I'm not the only person now saying this to you. You have people all over the place coming forward and telling you that when a democracy dies, it doesn't look the way you think it will look. It's almost imperceptible. And what you get if you elect an autocrat is subversion. Packing and weaponizing the courts, packing and weaponizing other agencies, separating women and children, using the Department of Homeland Security, which is supposed to be on that wall for cyber attacks. That's what the Department of Homeland Security was created to do. It was created after 9/11, and it was created to monitor cyber communications and to monitor, attacks on the United States through all methods. And instead, Donald Trump has turned the Department of Homeland Security into this massive immigration enforcement agency because he has weaponized it and disbanded the cybersecurity division inside the Department of Homeland Security, which is its primary mission. That's what it looks like. Buying off people into silence in both the Senate, the House, corporate America, rewriting the rules of politics to rig the playing field against opponents, saying things like, it's not a crime to take opposition research from a foreign adversary, which is what Rudy Giuliani is out there peddling, right? Just to even say that in a democracy ought to bring, people calling him up saying you're disgusting or you're treacherous or this is unpatriotic behavior, and these claims that you're making are way beyond what we think is acceptable in an American election. But people actually like that he's saying that you can now allow for foreign governments to hack your opponent and take that material and use it.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
He's already doing tremendous damage, abetted, by the way, by the Senate Republicans who are amazingly undercutting their own institution and its powers for very short-term gain. But Trump, yes, if Trump wins, he'll do great damage. But if he loses the election, he is going to call upon his supporters for violence. There's not going to be a civil war. That's idiocy. But you will see at least isolated violence on the part of crackpot supporters. He will be clinging to the doors of the White House, giving orders to everybody on all sides that the honest people will not obey, the career employees will not obey, the military certainly won't obey. Anderson, let's check back in a couple of years, but I'm telling you, and it's not funny, it's going to be very, very ugly, whatever happens, but Trump needs to go for the good of this country.
That just takes your breath away. That just takes your breath away. And that is a Republican, and that is a colonel, and that is a guy who has called Barack Obama the P word and was a Fox News analyst for years and years. Same with Napolitano, same with Shepard Smith. They're all trying to let you know that this man is dangerous for us, and he's got to go. And they're trying to drum up support in the American population to get rid of him before it's too late, to not let this go all the way through to 2020, because the election is not going to be free and fair. The Senate is gone. The DOJ is compromised at this point. You've got liars who are protecting him and acting more like his attorney than our attorney. You have an attorney general of the United States who refuses to uphold the law. He's actually in court, instead of defending Obamacare, which is the law of the land, he's in court trying to destroy Obamacare. I mean, it's exactly backwards from what it's supposed to be. And people are trying to tell you, and what they're trying to do is get support in the American population to start the impeachment. That's what they're trying to do. Allie in Arizona.
Allie. Hey, Randy.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Of course.
We've been with you, my wife and I have been flying with you since Air America.
Thank
you for all your good work. You're a very lovely person, very informative, very educational. We enjoy your podcast, your work every day for many years. My whole thing is something general. I just think we need to live in faith and not in fear. But we have to do due diligence. And you guide us, you tell us, you inform us what we need to do. We need to do our democratic duties.
Yeah.
It behooves us to be good democratic people. In other words, not just vote every 4 years, but do everything possible and guide us. And let us live in faith and not in fear. After all, where does the power lie? The power lies with the people.
That's right.
The base holds the power, not the tip of the pyramid.
That's right.
The tip of the pyramid is loose. Thank you, Randy. I don't want to talk anymore. Your time is precious, and we love you, and I love you especially.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you for that. Yes, I mean, the power is with the people. It has always been with the people, which is why propaganda is such a dangerous thing. That is why when you have a news channel that is a vowel movement away from what it does to the news, and people sit there and believe it and watch it, and then they get angry or fearful or resentful or whatever that emotion is, they won't make a good decision in the end. And that's why, and the only reason why propaganda is there is because propaganda works on weak-minded people. It works when you can say everything that's wrong, in your life is because of this group or that group or this person or the color of that person's skin is what's ruining your life. I mean, it makes no sense if you just say it like that. But that is what they do. That is what they sell, and it works, and that's why they do it. There's this big battle going on over at Fox News. Obviously, you can see that a lot of the pundits and a lot of the journalists, the real journalists, are, fighting back against Donald Trump. They're the Shepard Smiths of the world, the Brett Bairs. Some of them are trying to sound the signal. They're trying to tell you it's time to reject him. It's time for us to get rid of him. We can't let this go all the way through to 2020 because it won't be a free and fair election. He won't leave even if he loses. Why put this country through this ugliness? If he wins, we're destroyed. If he loses, there'll be violence. At least it'll be ugly. And they're saying, why put us through this? And then you got the opinion hosts. And they're very vocal right now by saying to the news people, the journalists, you're not being loyal to Trump, which is what they think their job is over there. To be loyal to this man who refuses to enforce or uphold or respect the laws. This is the battle that's going on over there in that channel. And what's interesting is that Fox News is very small now. It's tiny. It's minuscule. Why? Because they sold off the entertainment division, right? So like Fox, the movies, the TV shows, all that stuff is gone. And all that's left for Lachlan Murdoch, Rupert's son, is this little island of insanity. And, something tells me that Lachlan isn't going to think the return on his investment is all that good, that he should have to mediate between journalists and opinion hosts. So something tells me Fox News is going to destroy itself or get sold. And if it does, it could go either way. Meaning a Jeff Bezos or somebody with some journalistic integrity could actually step in and take that over, or some real sick company like Sinclair, who's only doing local now, could actually say, you know what, we want to do national. And Fox News is the greatest platform for us. So it could go either way, but we are absolutely at a critical moment. There's no question in my mind. When I start to hear dyed-in-the-wool, devout, Republican military people and intelligence people and attorneys who defended Richard Nixon, when I start to see journalists on Fox News try to sound the clarion call that, hey, it's time for him to go. Let's avoid all of this ugliness. Let's, spare ourselves from another civil war. Let's spare ourselves from another Cold War. Let's spare ourselves from a Watergate scenario. Let's spare ourselves from, just get rid of this guy. Just get rid of him. Just do, let Congress and the Senate do what they're supposed to do. The problem is the Senate is gone. And that's where the people come.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
One of the things that I've talked with former CIA Director General Michael Hayden a lot about, and he sort of uses this term, is the thin veneer of civilization, that we like to think democratic institutions are so deeply embedded in bedrock that any change would come slowly and would be thwarted ultimately by the institutions of democracy. But you write that it's very much up in the air whether America as we know it will survive.
Sure. I mean, institutions are, in the end, people. The institutions depend upon the willingness of people to obey norms and occasionally to say, okay, this is not how we do things in our country. And this didn't start with Trump. There's been a steady erosion of those norms. It wasn't Trump who basically decided to steal a Supreme Court seat. It wasn't Trump who basically turned the legitimate investigative powers of Congress into a way to harass the other party. So this has been building for a long time, and we're very close to the edge right now.
When you say close to the edge, what does that mean to you?
I think we'll on paper, we'll stay a democracy. But I worry very much about a sort of Hungary type situation where you have on paper the institutions of democracy, you even hold votes, but the system is rigged, and in fact it's become effectively you have one party rule.
You really believe that?
Oh, we could have this conversation 2 years from now and say that it happened. Or maybe we couldn't have this conversation because the media would demuzzle. But we're very close to it. If Trump is reelected, if the Republicans retake control of the House, what are the odds that we will really have a functioning democracy after that?
I mean, that's a pretty terrifying idea.
If you're not terrified, you're not paying attention.
How many people, big brains, giant intellects, economists, lawyers, military men, how many judges, have to tell you that the erosion of democracy is well underway. Now think about it this way. Remember when Barack Obama was president? They questioned his legitimacy to be president. That's part of the trudging towards Gomorrah. Taking away, the guardrails of American democracy includes denying that your president is legitimate, okay? And Republicans question the legitimacy of Barack Obama and almost every one of their Democratic rivals from the very beginning of Barack Obama, from the very beginning. And the failure of democracy is incremental. And Mitch McConnell's totally on board, and that's what really bothers me is that, the courts are gone, the agencies are starting to be eaten up by Trump appointees. You have this is a disgusting, horrible story. The story, there's two of them that really stuck out to me this week that we really didn't talk about. The one about, you remember this lieutenant in the Coast Guard? Used to be a Marine, and then he joined the Coast Guard, and he's a white supremacist, and he had a whole stash of weapons and a manifesto, and he was quoting the Christchurch, was based on this this Norwegian Nazi dude, right? And Breivik, I guess, and he had a whole list of Democrats and a list of TV personalities and all this, and media figures, and two Supreme Court justices and the leaders of social media companies and prosecutors that he was threatening to kill in his manifesto, remember? And he was arrested before he could do anything. And it turns out he's drug addicted. He's a mess. He's a white supremacist. He's a mess. His name was Lieutenant Christopher Hassan. He's 50 years old. Our government, the Department of Justice, refused to charge him as somebody who was likely to commit terrorism, and so he was eligible for bail, and the federal court actually let him go. They let him bail himself out of jail today. And, he'll be released in the coming days. They're setting his conditions right now. And even when the judge said, well, look, because the prosecutors didn't charge him with terrorism, he's eligible for bail. And he said, I have grave concerns about him. We'll put him under supervision, but I do have grave concerns about him. And this morning, on Morning Joe, Mika, who's married to, Joe Scarborough, who was on the list of targets that Lieutenant Hassan had, she was livid.
These are the things that you find after a massacre, and you go, oh, these were the warning signs. We should have noticed them. So the warning signs are right there. And I say this as the wife of someone who was on that list, so you may hear a little intensity in my voice, but I think Trump's doing this. How can I not do that math in my mind? That the Attorney General is making a clear decision here to make sure the lives of people who are being targeted are continue to be in danger because they will not put together of this case, a stockpile of weapons, a list of people that he wants to kill. Are you serious? There's no way not to let this guy walk. You've got to be kidding me.
She was out of her mind, upset. And Joe actually started talking to, some of the lawyers that were at the table this morning. And what they finally came around to was Mika's point of view. They understood that the prosecutors had failed. And it was their discretion to charge this guy with an attempted terrorist attack, and they refused to do it, even though he left a manifesto. He's still alive, obviously, even though he had a manifesto, and a search of his computer showed that he'd been following the destabilizing terrorist attack in Christchurch, and the Norwegian terrorist Anders Breivik, and that he's obviously a white supremacist who loves Trump. He was arrested in February. I don't know if you remember him. And they agreed to keep him behind bars temporarily to give the prosecutors the added time to add terrorism-related charges to the charges, and they refused. The DOJ refused. And there's another one, too. There's a Navy SEAL who has gone completely unhinged to the point where his own comrades, his own Navy SEALs, turned him in as being a murderer. Okay, turned him in as being 7 members of SEAL Team 7 of that platoon called a private meeting with their troop commander in March of 2018 at the naval base in Coronado near San Diego. And according to the confidential Navy criminal investigation report that the New York Times was able to get, the platoon gave the bloody details on this rogue Team SEAL 7 member, his name's Ed Gallagher, and said this guy is unhinged. He's he stabbed, a 15-year-old boy. He's picking off civilians. He's firing his sniper rifle more than anybody else. All these things were going on, and the military told him to stop. Told the platoon members stop talking about it. And then they said, you know what? We're going to go to the press. We're going to go to the press if you don't do something, because this man is beating people. He's killing people. He's stealing from people. He's using drugs. We've seen him do a million horrible things. And they told him, just shut up about it. They threatened to go to the press, and then all of a sudden, they finally put him in the brig. Trump had him released from the brig. Something's going on.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
But if you have a plot to kill the Speaker of the House, the third highest ranking constitutional officer, you're fine. You get out of jail. Even though you have the manifesto, you have the weapons, you have the plans, you have the means, and you've expressed that you're going to kill the Speaker of the House. Then you're fine?
No.
Well, Joe, it depends on what federal prosecutors charge you with. In general, under federal law,
but see,
defendants are entitled to...
isn't that the rub right there?
Yes.
What federal prosecutors decide to charge you with.
And they didn't.
And they didn't. And Barr didn't. And the U.S. Attorney didn't. And yet, when the Republicans got gunned down, of course, everybody was asking, why didn't we do something before Steve Scalise and other Republicans got shot
So many
at?
warning signs.
Who in the hell would look at this manifesto and then say, you know what, this might be a tough case. I don't know if we want to move it forward or not. Who would do that after Steve Scalise's shooting?
No one would do that except for a president of the United States ordering a Department of Justice to just charge a white supremacist with drugs and weapons charges instead of terrorism charges after this man had a manifesto, clearly a cache of weapons, clearly a list of targets, clearly a white supremacist who wanted to take out media personalities, the Speaker of the House, politicians, a whole list, 2 Supreme Court justices, and they only charge him with drug and weapons charges. I mean, this is sick. And the same thing with this Navy SEAL. This guy, Ed Gallagher, okay? This is an amazing story. This is one of the craziest ones ever. And if you've ever been in the military, you're kind of like, oh, well, the military does this all the time, because they do. If you go to the military and you say, I'm serving with a killer, or you say, I was raped, they go, just shut up about it, right? Just shut up about it. But this guy was actually finally the platoon, the SEAL Team 7 platoon, threatened to go to the media because they were told, just shut up about it. And they said, no, this guy is a killer. This guy, there's something wrong with this guy. And they go, well, we don't look kindly on rank and file members making allegations against their chief, right? You can never do that. And they threatened to go to the media, and they finally put this guy in the brig. And now all of a sudden, he's been ordered out of the brig. He's been ordered out of the brig.
As grim as it may sound, it would be very easy to make this type of thing go away if everyone was on board. Mm-hmm. You can imagine a platoon in a place like Mosul. If someone wanted to kill someone who didn't necessarily
deserve it,
fall into the legal parameters, that could happen and no one would say anything if everyone was okay with it. But what struck me is that there was a schism in this platoon where clearly there were people who were not okay with what was going on and thought their chief had gone over the line. So when I saw his arrest, I really wanted to see what was going on behind the scenes. And I was lucky enough to get a really rare look at these confidential documents, about 500 pages of Navy criminal investigation that interviewed these SEALs, that included hundreds of text messages from the chief's seized phone, and they really gave us almost unprecedented look at how these things unfolded. And as you mentioned at the top, there was a lot of details in there of killing, of indiscriminate shooting. But what also struck me over and over again is you have one SEAL who is accused of doing things that went beyond the law and murdering people. But then you have 7 SEALs at least who stood up and said, this is wrong, our superior is doing something wrong, and they did what they are supposed to do. They, according to the documents and what they told investigators, they went to their chain of command and tried for months to get an investigation started. And they were told, I think, I don't know what the motivation behind it was, but they were told, look, decompress.
Right.
Don't worry about this.
Right. Shut up.
This could ruin your career. You might want to think about this. This could take down other people.
Yep.
And, they were really frustrated that even though they saw something abhorrent, their chain of command seemed unwilling to act.
Yeah, and the immediate superior to this Chief Gallagher, okay, this immediate superior is a lieutenant named Jacob Portier. He not only failed to report these criminal actions after the platoon reported it to him, but he also destroyed evidence, and now he's being charged. But meanwhile, this Ed Gallagher dude, he was let out of the brig. Why? Because of Fox News. I'm not kidding. Fox News, the chief's wife, Andrea Gallagher, the chief is named Ed Gallagher. He's the one that was put in the brig. She kept on going on Fox News and other news outlets, and she kept on calling her husband a hero and demanding his release and all this. She was saying, oh, this was all concocted by disgruntled subordinates. He was a demanding chief, and they couldn't meet his standards and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, this guy Gallagher is texting that they're all traitors, and he's texting, that he used a hatchet to break somebody's face, and he's texting that he bought a hunting knife from some guy, and he used it to stab a kid and all that. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And Fox News is literally selling T-shirts. Free Ed Gallagher, free Ed Gallagher. Something really evil and unholy is going on where actual criminals are supported by this president. Actual killers, actual terrorists are being let go or gone soft on or, taken out of the brig. And I mean, this is just freaking amazing. And you have a president who says, the tough people are on my side, the bikers and right? And the military. Why is he telling you this? Okay, I rest my case. Larry in Lake Elsinore. Oh, Larry. Oh, my God. That food was insane. Oh, so all I have left is the espresso biscotti because they're the size of your head. Larry sent out, oh my God, he sent us a tropical, fruit biscotti. He sent us espresso biscotti. You sent me, what was it, walnut or something? Biscotti and
banana walnut.
Banana walnut and little rum balls. Some of them had coconut. Some of them had nut. They were to die for. And I got you a big thing of barbecue sauce. That is just, oh my God, unreal. Thank you.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad it went over well. Did you have any of it for your Passover dinner?
Okay, so I had a rum ball with coconut, a rum ball with nuts, and I had a quarter of the tropical biscotti, which was to die for. And then, just so you know, I gave this whole Commerce Park ate really well because I went around and I gave them out because you made so much. Oh my God, it was like a.
So I kind of owed it to you because it was delayed, and I wanted to give you a variety pack, and there was a lemon poppy seed biscotti too. That was
oh my God!
Good.
So everyone in this Commerce Park ate really, really well, and they also and my hair salon. Okay, they ate really well. My next door neighbor here, Junior and Hoyslin, they love the rum balls with the coconut, and the tropical was their thing. But everybody had so much of it. It was so delicious. Thank you.
Oh, I'm very glad that everybody enjoyed it. It pleases me when I can please others. So
unbelievable. Yeah,
but as a long time ago, I mentioned watch out for the revolution.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't too far off, but
I honestly,
he was with him being on there. I watched that this morning.
Yeah.
He is calling his people to arms.
I know.
He is setting everything up. It is so transparent what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he is totally going against the Constitution. He's creating his own militia, his own Trumpian army.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hoping that America wakes up, and including a lot of these people that have been following him, because this will be the end of our democracy. We're at the brink of it now.
Yeah, it's been on life support, I have to say, ever since pretty much 2000. So for the past 18 years, I have watched it be incrementally dissolved. Okay, but the Mitch McConnell in the last term, the last year of Obama, that was beyond the pale. Okay, the 2000 election, that I never saw anything like that or read about anything like that in any book I ever read about our country, where the Supreme Court picked the president. But I gotta say that Mitch McConnell has literally put so much juice into the destruction of our democracy by ordering the Senate to be silent. Do you know what I mean? And part of it is they have dirty hands. Part of it is they went to Russia at the behest of the NRA. The NRA, Maria Butina, infiltrated it. They went to Russia. They did do these things. And they're protecting their own butt. But it's keeping us from having to deal with 2020. The country should not have to go to the brink with a rigged election and a president that won't leave. And that's where it's headed.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, everybody understands his call to arms. He's already said it. Well, the tough guys, the bikers and the military and law enforcement, they're hot. Don't we just love law? He's doing that to get them to fight for him as his own little private militia. But have a good weekend. And stay tuned for the Randi Rhodes After Hours podcast.